In this video, we're going to do a little bit of environment setup. Once we set up our local machine to work with TypeScript, we'll then begin working on our first project. So let's get to it. The first thing we'll do is to install the TypeScript compiler. To install it, we're going to use npm. Now, if you're here in this course, I'm going to assume that you've got a basic understanding of both Node and npm. So I'm going to assume, in particular, that you've already got Node and npm installed on your local system. If you don't, you'll want to do a quick Google search on how to install Node on your local machine. Again, I'm really assuming that you've got that knowledge ahead of time. So we're going to use npm to install TypeScript as a global module. We're also going to install a second module called tsnode. tsnode is a little command line tool that allows us to compile and execute TypeScript with one command at our terminal. We're going to use it in the first half of this course just for running some TypeScript very quickly without having to set up a full tooling installation kind of deal. So let's get to it. I'm going to open up my terminal. Once over here, I'm going to run npm install -g, and I'll get TypeScript and ts-node like so. All right, so that's going to take just a moment or two to install rather quickly. Once it is installed, I can then make sure that it is successfully installed, and then I can run the compiler by running tsc --help, like so. So we installed a package called TypeScript. It gives us access to a command called tsc, which is short for, as you might guess, TypeScript compiler. This is what we're going to use to actually compile our TypeScript code into plain JavaScript. So if I run this command, I should see a bunch of help messages appear on the screen like so. If you see any error, that means that your npm installation probably has a little issue and you'll need to do a little bit of troubleshooting. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the actual TypeScript setup. Now we're going to walk through a little additional setup here for setting up Visual Studio Code. Now this is a code editor. If you've already got Visual Studio Code installed, I encourage you to still watch this video because I'm going to show you some settings that are important for you to have. If you want to use another code editor inside this course, that's totally fine. I've tried out many other code editors, and personally, I think that Visual Studio Code is one of the best ones out there for working with TypeScript. So if you've never used it, I would recommend at least try it one time. So I'm going to go through the installation process here really quickly. I'll first go to that link inside of a new browser tab, and I'll find the green download button on the left-hand side. Once I download this zip file, I'll then open it up. That's going to extract it. Here's the Visual Studio Code application. And if you're on Mac, all you have to do is drag and drop that into the applications folder. If you're on Windows, you're going to instead see a little installer. All you have to do is go through the installation process. It's just a couple clicks. Now that we've got VS Code installed, we're going to do just a couple steps of configuration. So this is what we're going to go through. I'm mostly showing you these configuration steps just so you understand the exact settings that I'm running locally. Now, just to be clear, I just did a fresh installation of VS Code, like I completely deleted my previous installation. So when I go through these settings, you're going to see a fresh installation being set up here. So I don't have any previous setup whatsoever. All right, so let's get to it. The first thing I'm going to do is open up Visual Studio Code. And it's going to take just a moment this first time that it boots up to actually open. So I'm just going to let it do its thing. All right, there we go. All right, so once I've got Visual Studio Code open, we're going to go through each of these different setup steps right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up code in my path variable. Now what this essentially does is allow me to launch my code editor from the terminal, which I'm going to be doing quite a bit throughout this course. So to do so, I'm going to go over to the editor, and then I'll go up to View, and then find Command Palette. And then once here, I'm going to search for Add Path. Actually, not Add Path. I think it's Install Path. Yeah, there we go. So install code command in path. All we have to do is click that, and that's pretty much it. We'll see a little notification down here. If I now flip on over to my terminal, I can open up a new window. Make sure you open up a new window. If you try to run this command in an existing window, it's probably going to fail. And then once over here, you can open up your code editor in any directory by running code and then dot, like so. Now, as you'll see, it'll pop open my code editor right away. All right, so let's keep going through these installation steps. The other ones are going to be pretty quick. So the next one is going to be to install the Prettier extension. Prettier is a code formatter. It's going to take a look at your code every time you save a file and automatically format it in some fixed fashion. So I usually use Prettier just to have some very consistent looking code, and I highly recommend you try it out as well. To install this extension, I'll go back over to my editor, I'll find View, I'll then look for Extensions, and then on the left-hand side, I'll search for Prettier. And it's going to be the first one right here by Esben Petersen. So I'll hit Install, and that's pretty much it. Now we're going to do a little bit of configuration on Prettier. We're going to make sure first that it formats every file when we save it. So to do so, I'll go back over. I'm going to again go to my View menu. And then I'm going to look for, not View, I'm looking for Preferences, or excuse me, Code Preferences Settings. There it is. And then once I've got the Settings tab up right here, I'll do a search for Format on Save. And I'll see a setting right here called Format on Save. So we just have to check that, and that's pretty much it. Next up, I'm going to configure Prettier to use single quotes. Now this is entirely personal. If you want to use double quotes, totally fine. You can use either single quotes or double quotes safely with TypeScript. I just prefer single quotes. So to set up Prettier to format my code in that fashion, I'll go back over to my settings page. I'll look for single quotes, and I'll scroll down just a little bit right here, and I'll see a setting called Prettier single quote, and check it. All right, next one is I'm going to make sure that I use 2 spaces for indentation as opposed to tabs. Again, this is very personal. You can go either way. I personally like to use 2 spaces for indentation. So to do so, I'm going to delete the search term up here, and then scroll down on the default settings here just a little bit, and I should see tab size right here, and I'll just change it to 2, like so. All right, so last thing, I'm going to set my theme to be Solarized Light. So that's just going to change the coloring of my editor a little bit. So to do so, I'm going to go back over once again. I'll look for Theme. I'll find Color Theme right here. Right now the default is dark, and I'm going to change it to Solarized Light instead. And that's it. Okay, now one last little thing I'm going to do here. I am going to hide this bar on the left-hand side. I can find that setting by looking up Activity Bar. So Workbench, Activity Bar Visible, and I'm just going to deselect that so that little bar on the side goes away. All right, so that's it. That's all the configuration I do to my editor. So if you went through these steps, you now have an editor that's set up identically to mine. So now that we've got everything set up for our local environment, let's take a quick pause right here, and we're going to start writing some code in the next video.